Welcome back. It's Beyond the Box Score, presented to you by Fantasy Football Today here at CBS Sports. I'm Dan Schneier, your co-host. Jacob, my co-host, is behind the scenes again today, kind of working the graphics as we let these three analysts take over. It's Sleepers Week at Beyond the Box Score. You might have heard our episode yesterday. We brought on three awesome guests to break down their favorite sleepers in rounds 9, 10, 11, and 12. We had a little bit of a snake draft where they got to pick those sleepers in order. We're doing things a little bit differently today for this episode of Sleepers Week. We're letting these three analysts pick any sleeper from any of those later rounds, their favorite value. So again, instead of being like pigeonholed to round 9, 10, and 11, 12, you can just pick your favorite value from those late rounds and the deep sleeper as well. I know you guys all love that Jermaine Burton pick yesterday from Rebar. That was a deep, deep cut. I think when we looked at the ADP outside the top 350. So that one was fun, but we're just having fun over here. And one thing I want to say is, if you are new to our show, Beyond the Box Score, please do us a favor. Hit the like button right now. We really need your help growing this show. So a like and comment go a very, very long way. It takes you hopefully 5 seconds to hover your hand over that mouse, click like, write a comment, share, subscribe, do all of those things. Also, here at FFT, we are in the middle of Draftathon month, which means it is our multi-month long donation fundraiser for St. Jude. Please take a look at that. In the comments, you could find out how to donate. We have the match coming up between myself and Adam Mazer next Thursday, where he tries to beat me in tennis after losing 6-2, 6-0 last year. So he claims he's been playing a lot, 4 times a week. We'll see where that takes him. I'm not worried at all. But today we have a special show as part 2 of Sleepers Week. We are bringing on 3 of my favorite analysts, and we're going to start here with Jared Smola. You can find right now, and I hope I pronounced your last name right. I don't think I ever got the pronunciation of it, but he runs DraftSharks.com, and you could find right now their series, Comeback Player, Early Round Bust Pick, and then Breakout next week over at DraftSharks.com. They also have the Draft War Room, a customizable cheat sheet that you can use for your drafts. We also have a friend of mine, Pat Fitzmaurice, and he's a friend of mine because he's a fellow Badger, and we two are both kind of just sitting here thinking about the good old days of Badgers football as we head into another season with very little hope. I think I saw the other day, Pat, our over-under is like 5.5. I couldn't believe that I'm living in a world where Badgers football has an over-under of 5.5, but it's a reality that I am forced to live in. And he is over at Fantasy Pros, where they are offering a 3-day trial for premium subscriptions right now, 3-day free trial. You can find that and more at Pat's Twitter at Fitz_FF. And finally, Justin Boone, new to Yahoo Sports. So you can find a sleeper series going on right now over at Yahoo Sports. That's awesome because it aligns with today's show. And you can find him on Twitter at Justin Boone, no underscore, no nothing. How are you all doing today, my friends?
Doing great, doing as well as we could be doing this time of year. We were joking before the show a little bit that the workload is ramping up. We're basically into it now, and we won't be out of it until the new year. But it's a fun time of year, and I think this is what we all love, right? This is why we got into this. We love trying to react to all the different news and pump out as much content as we can.
Yeah, I was gonna say no one wants to hear us complain about our jobs. Right?
This is true. This is true. We are very, very lucky to be here, and I'm very lucky, and Jacob and I are very lucky to have you three on the show. You three have all been excellent when it comes to accuracy in fantasy. I believe, Justin, you have 8 top 10 finishes in the Fantasy Pros Rankings accuracy contest. So just a lot of incredible stuff going on here. And Jared, my friend, we may need to talk off show. I heard you're getting close to breaking 80 on the golf course. I've had a rough 3rd season trying golf. A good 2nd season, broke 90 like 12 months in the game, and now I just can't get over the hump. So need some swing tips from you, Jared. We'll talk about that after the show, though. Nobody here wants to be bored with golf. So instead of doing that, let's talk about the first pick of our sleepers draft, part 2. So again, remember the rules here. You're not pigeonholed to taking a player in round 9, 10, 11, or 12 in that order. Just your favorite value sleeper in the draft. We're going to start with you, Justin, and we'll move forward after that. Who is your favorite sleeper? You can go anywhere on the board here.
So I'm going with a guy who I have referred to on the Yahoo Fantasy Forecast show as the best value in fantasy drafts this year. I'm going to go a couple rounds deeper than where we're starting, and I'm taking Emeka Egbuka on the Buccaneers. And there's a ton of reasons for it. I mean, a great prospect coming out, a first-round talent. He's got that draft capital behind him. But this guy is just getting so much love from everybody in and around the Bucs organization, right? And it's not just beat writers saying it. It's everyone. It's Baker Mayfield saying that he's such a pro and that he's raising the bar for the players around him, which you normally don't hear about a rookie. It's Mike Evans saying nice things about him. And then also the fact that Chris Godwin's situation, coming back from this ankle injury, he reportedly had a second surgery in the spring. We have no idea when he's going to be back. We don't know what the recovery timeline is for him. And now there's even been some talk that he could potentially miss time at the start of the season. So Egbuka getting all this positive buzz, stepping into a situation where one of those veteran receivers is going to be out of the picture, I think, early in the season. And when Godwin comes back, how long is it going to take him to get back to form? Is he going to be 100%? Or is he going to end up taking a bit of a back seat to this really exciting rookie? I think that's how this is going to work out. I have Egbuka all the way up at my wide receiver 36 in my rankings. I think this is a guy that you're going to be able to start early in the season, and you're going to be able to ride him all year long as one of your starters.
For those tallying at home, that's 2 Emeka Egbuka calls now. He's been a sleeper pick on each of the last 2 shows. A lot of excitement around him. I just love, and I mentioned it yesterday, but I do love that Baker Mayfield pointed out his blocking as something that's really stood out. That's going to keep him on the field. We need him on the field for those snaps. But hopefully you didn't get sniped here, Jared. I'm going to let you have the second pick of this draft. Your favorite value sleeper, go any round. Who do you like?
Yeah, I'm not sure I have the right strategy here, but I'm just going with the guys I like best. And if I go down this list of options here, the guy I have ranked highest is Juwan Jennings, who we have as a round 9 sleeper here. A strange profile as a 4th-year breakout. In a lot of cases, that'd be someone I might want to be betting against. But man, everything I look at from Jennings last year, I think he's legit. The production was obviously there. He had the huge week 3. It was against the Rams, I believe. 11 catches, 175 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Like you don't do that in the NFL if you're not super talented. And then of course from week 10 on, when he's kind of back in that full-time role, 5.8 catches per game, 63 yards per game. He was the wide receiver 29 in PPR points per game over that span. And then some of the advanced metrics we look at. So 104 wide receivers last year with 40 plus targets. Jennings was 9th among those 104 in targets per route, 14th in yards per route, 15th in PFF receiving grade, 10th in ESPN receiver score. So all these different metrics, like Juwan Jennings was a top 15 wide receiver in the NFL last year. I think the risks here are the contract thing and the calf, and they're probably related, honestly. But as long as that's clear up before week 1, like I don't see much downside here. He's gonna be a full-time player in this always efficient Kyle Shanahan passing game. So I just, where he's priced in drafts as a round 9 pick. I think that's closer to his floor than his ceiling.
And this is the second time Jennings has been mentioned sleeper week as well. He was a pick yesterday too. So Jennings has been a big favorite of ours at Beyond the Box Score. But my one concern is that calf injury. Like I've just seen these injuries linger at times. It's the one thing I'm monitoring, but everything else suggests that this breakout is ready to happen. And not even a breakout, you can just play the sleeper price of a round 9 pick. So love that call as well. I'm going to let you take over now, Pat, and pick your favorite sleeper remaining on the board.
I'll go to round 12, Dan, with Drake May. And last year, I think Jaden Daniels was kind of a key to winning leagues for a lot of people as this guy who was being drafted as a low-end quarterback 1 or high-end quarterback 2 who had this vast rushing upside. And I kind of think Drake May is that guy this year. He started 12 games as a rookie. And if we exclude the week 18 game where Drake May was pulled after 1 series, he averaged 37.2 rushing yards per start, which projects to 632 rushing yards over a full season. But I think we're just kind of seeing the tip of the iceberg with his rushing potential. Nearly all of that yardage came on scrambles. I think there was 1 designed run for Drake May all season. And now with Josh McDaniels calling the plays, last time we saw Josh McDaniels calling plays in New England with a mobile quarterback, it was Cam Newton. And there were a lot of designed runs that year, and Newton had 12 rushing touchdowns. Last year, May had 2 rushing touchdowns when he was playing as a college starter at North Carolina. He had 16 touchdown runs in 26 starts. And as a sophomore, Drake May had just under 700 rushing yards in 14 games, 698. Wow. And that is with college quarterbacks getting sack yardage deducted from their rushing totals. And May lost about 200 yards in sacks that year. So he was really closer to 850 was it did I say 898? Yeah, it was somewhere just short of 900 rushing yards in 14 games. And, we saw May look pretty good as a passer last year, despite having one of the worst offensive lines and one of the worst wide receiver cores in the NFL. And the Patriots have upgraded in both of those areas. So I think we're going to get that rushing goodness with a decent passing baseline for Drake May in year 2.
And you'll never get any pushback here at Beyond the Box Score, at least on Drake May. This is a Drake May positive podcast. Jacob and I just love his film. And I've been a fan of May since his freshman season in the ACC. I just knew that he had that it factor. I love that you brought up the point about his rushing, because I have read in camp, he said, I want to look to rush less. And I think what he meant is scramble and in those situations get to the check down. But adding in design rushes will more than make up for that. So I think that's a huge factor coming with McDaniel. So love that pick as well. We're going to get into some more of their favorite sleepers when we come back. But first, we're going to take a quick break to hear a word from our sponsors.
They want to take this place from us. My family is in danger. My wife is lost to me, and I don't have time.
1923, new season now streaming exclusively on Paramount Plus.
All right, Pat, you're back on the board. You've taken Drake May as your favorite value sleeper left on the board at the time. Who's the next favorite for you?
All right, I'm going to go with Jordan Mason. And let's see, I'm just trying to, I lost the round on him. I think that is the 10th. Yeah, 10th round for Jordan Mason. And so he's starting to get a little more expensive, but we are getting this buzz out of Vikings camp that maybe it's more of a 50-50 split backfield rather than Mason being a backup to 30-year-old Aaron Jones. And when the Vikings traded for Mason in the offseason, they immediately gave him a 2-year deal that includes more than $7 million in guaranteed money. So part of that, I think, was that the Vikings were a little light on draft capital and wanted to lock in a quality veteran backup to Jones, who hasn't always been the healthiest guy in years past. But we saw what Mason was capable of last year when Christian McCaffrey was sidelined at the start of the season. Mason averaged 107 rushing yards for the 49ers over the first 5 games of the season before getting hurt himself, 120 scrimmage yards per game and 5.1 yards per carry. And I think Mason is going to be a really good fit with the Vikings, who use a lot of outside zone. That's pretty much right up Mason's alley. We're looking at a guy who could have immense value in what should be a pretty good offense. Kevin O'Connell, just whatever he touches seems to turn to gold, and they have upgraded that offensive line in the offseason. So I do like Mason. I think he's going to have standalone value, and he would be just gold if anything ever happened to Aaron Jones.
I love that call. And I love the point you brought up about outside zone, about their improvements on the offensive line. That can go a long way for Mason as we see kind of Jones enter those final years. So great pick there. We're going to put you back on the board here, Jared. You had the second pick in the first round. You have the second pick in the second round. Who do you got?
Yeah, just on Mason real quick, if you don't mind.
Guys, feel free to expand on any of the players that are discussed.
Cool. Yeah, I'd been fading Mason for like the entire offseason. I finally caved and come around and kind of believe that this is going to be like close to a 50-50 split. And one of the big things for me is Kevin O'Connell talking up his ability in the passing game, both as a pass catcher and a pass protector. We haven't seen that from Mason as a pro. He has like 14 career catches or something. And I still think Aaron Jones is going to do most of the passing down stuff. But like if Jordan Mason can give us 20 to 30 catches on top of the rushing stuff, which I do think is going to be there. I think that's going to be key to him kind of delivering value at his cost right now. So I'm in on Mason after unfortunately not drafting too much of him for most of the offseason so far.
Well, you got in at the end when his price is definitely the highest that it's been.
Yeah,
but
I know.
It still could be an excellent value. I think Pat brought up a great case to explain why. For me, with Mason and all these Vikings players, what it comes down to is, do I buy into the offense? I know there's an assumption that, look, Kevin O'Connell's been able to do with anyone and everyone. Darnold, Dobbs for a little bit, Mullins for a little bit. I have my reservations about J.J. McCarthy right now, just stepping right in after a full season off under pressure. I mean, he can do it in camp, but that's a different story. So we'll see on that front. But I'm going to toss it over to Justin now to give me his next favorite sleeper that's still on the board.
I think it's still my
Wait,
pick, right?
no,
I
we-
was just trying.
yeah,
I
we
was just
skipped-
trying
we
to.
skipped
My
Jared
bad.
there.
I skipped over Jared. I didn't even let him have a pick. I just said, you get to talk about
Okay.
Mason a little bit. You don't even get a pick. You get the pick at the end. It's like the Vikings actually getting passed over in that one draft. But anyway, get back into it. Sorry about
Yes,
that.
I'm gonna go with the guy who he's actually one of my most drafted running backs so far, and that is gonna be round 11, Tyjae Spears.
Ooh, yeah.
Spears was obviously disappointing last year from a fantasy perspective. He was just banged up all last season. Ankle injury in week 2, hamstring injury in week 6 that cost him the next 3 games. He was concussed in week 11, another concussion in week 17. Despite all that, he was RB 11 in PPR points per game. He was actually RB 32 in points per game if you just look at his 9 full games. That's like already higher than he's being drafted right now. I think if this guy's healthy in 2025, he's gonna play a bigger role in this backfield. Spears was much better, much more efficient as a rookie in 2023. 14th in yards per carry among 49 qualifying running backs, 11th in yards after contact per attempt, 4th in missed tackles forced per attempt. He's also an excellent pass catching back. He caught 52 passes as a rookie in 2023, caught 30 last year despite all those injuries. And everything we heard from the Titans coaching staff last offseason was they kept calling Spears and Pollard interchangeable. They were talking about, it just sounded like this was going to be close to a 50-50 split. I think that was their plan. It just didn't happen because Spears just wasn't healthy all last season. So I think if Spears is healthy this season, he's, kind of at his peak for, running backs in terms of age, right? He's like 24, 25. Tony Pollard's getting up there now. I think he's 28. I think these guys could be heading in opposite directions. So I think right out of the gate, you're going to see Spears, getting 35, 40% of the backfield work. And I think there's a chance that by midway through the season, Spears is the lead back. And then if nothing else, there's, huge handcuff upside here. If Tony Pollard goes down, Spears is going to be a top 15 back, I would think, in our weekly ranking. So round 11, Spears is someone I've been taking a ton of.
Spears is definitely another favorite here on Beyond the Box Score. I feel, at least for me, and I don't want to speak for Jacob, to me, it's mostly based on the player. I'm curious what you guys think, and maybe I'll toss this over to Pat or Justin if you have any strong thoughts on this, on the Titans offense in general, because I think for Spears to hit, that offense definitely needs to take a step forward. Where are you guys at with that offense in 2025?
I'm not as concerned about like the recent reports that they've been struggling in practice. I think people get crazy about that stuff. Like there's a month before the season. This is the time when people are going to struggle in practice, especially if you have a rookie quarterback and you're trying to figure things out. And in terms of like quarterbacks and all the reporting about like this guy threw 5 interceptions today. Oh my God, right? This is the time to throw interceptions. Yeah. This is the time to test your limits and figure out like, can you hit that window or where does the ball need to be when you're throwing it downfield? If you're dinking and dunking this time of year, then when you get to the regular season, it's going to be way, way worse when you try to push the ball downfield. So I'm actually kind of interested in that Titans offense. I think Cam Ward is going to be the answer there. Now, it might take a little bit of time for him to get completely comfortable in the pros, but I think he is a better quarterback than people give him credit for. I know he went first overall, but I don't feel like he's getting almost any buzz, right? Like people aren't talking about him in the fantasy community. When was the last time that happened with a quarterback that went first overall? So I'm very interested. I think Brian Callahan is a good offensive mind. I think they've upgraded the quarterback position. They've invested in that offensive line more. I think they have some weapons. I think this offense could be decent this year. It's certainly going to be upgraded off of what we saw last year.
I love that. And I love the schedule they get to play in the AFC South. And this is a player, Justin, who made your late round sleepers article that we just featured up there. So I wonder if you did just get sniped and you're up next. And I'm so glad that I didn't just skip over Jared if that's the case.
I didn't get sniped. No, I wasn't going to say Spears here, but you're right. He not only is in that article that went up today on the sleeper running backs, but he's the picture on the article and he's the first back that I talk about. And I think Jared did a great job breaking that one down. So not too much that I need to add there. I'm going to go with a guy that I'm kind of surprised is still on the board here, Jaden Reed. And I believe that's round 9. I get to backtrack here and go back to round 9. This is a guy that like halfway through last season, people were so excited about him, and then he really fell off after the Packers bye. But I don't understand why people aren't as excited about what he did in that first like year and a half of his career, right? Like a top 50 pick in real life, a guy that instantly earned a role in Matt LaFleur's offense, finished as the wide receiver 23 as a rookie, scored 10 total touchdowns. He had 8 receiving and 2 rushing, added some value on the ground. That's part of his game. Last year, there was a lot of room for growth, And he was averaging wide receiver 14 fantasy stats through the first 9 games last season. His playing time was up too. He's playing 66% of the snaps, where as a rookie, he played 56% of the snaps. And then, like I said, after that week 10 bye, he just fell off a cliff. He didn't top 50 yards once the rest of the season. I don't know if injuries were involved, but his playing time dropped down a little bit. This is still the same player, though. And I know they went out and invested in a first-round receiver, but Reed has shown us that he can be a fantasy difference maker, that he can put up those wide receiver 2 stats. You get him in like the wide receiver 4 flex kind of range.
Right.
Very few players in that range, I think, have that kind of top 20 upside, yet he does. So he's somebody that I'm happy to get if he's going in this area.
Yeah, I love that call. He was also a player mentioned yesterday. I think it's going to be very interesting to see how the Packers targets shake out this year, and just which we know there's going to be some value there in fantasy. It's kind of a difficult situation to figure out who, especially with Matthew Golden really coming on strong. Do you, either of you, Jared and Pat, have any thoughts on the Packers wide receivers? Which one you're targeting? Maybe is it Reed?
If I was forced to go with one of them, yeah, it would be Reed.
Okay.
I do worry about it that, he just hasn't played that much in 2 receiver sets. So that's kind of kept his snap counts around 63% or so, his snap share, I should say. But, he does deliver a little bit of rushing value. And so, yeah, and we're going to see the volume increase. Like the Packers were way below level in passing rate over expected. And I think part of that was because Jordan Love just wasn't healthy at all last season.
Right.
He dealt with the sprained MCL in week 1 that caused him to miss a couple games. He wasn't 100% when he came back, and then he tweaked his groin at midseason and played with that the entire way. So I think the Packers are going to throw more this year, and that could be sort of the thing that raises all boats in that wide receiver room. But, honestly, I'm probably picking Tucker Kraft over any of the receivers.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah, I think Pat nailed it there with the just passing volume. The Packers, they were bottom 3 last year in pass rate, neutral pass rate, and pass rate over expected. Wow. And I know they added Josh Jacobs, and that played a part, but I think the Love injuries were a big part of that too. I think you're going to see a pretty noticeable jump in pass volume for this team this season. So I kind of want pieces of all these pass catchers because they're all cheap, right? I mean, or Jaden Reed's around 9, Matthew Golden goes in the same area, Tucker Kraft kind of same area. So it's especially for best ball, I'd like stacking the Packers. It's a really cheap stack.
I love it. All right, Justin, you're back on the board. 3rd favorite sleeper at value calls who's still left on the board. Where are we going here?
We are going to go to Josh Downs in round 10, and finished as a top 25 fantasy receiver last year in 5 of the 7 games that Joe Flacco played. And it's not that Joe Flacco's like an amazing quarterback. He just gave them like decent quarterback play. And you saw Josh Downs go off in those games. The key is going to be more consistent quarterback play. So are we going to get that from Anthony Richardson, who by all accounts does appear to be playing a little bit better in training camp so far based on the reports out of there? If not, and we have to go to Daniel Jones either for week 1 or at some point in the season, Daniel Jones has a history of peppering his slot receiver. Last year, Wan'Dale Robinson, 8.4 targets per game through the first 10 outings. That was before Jones got hurt. That was the 13th most in the league over that stretch. So Josh Downs could get a lot of targets if it's Daniel Jones, or, and I think this is what we hope, Anthony Richardson starts to become the player that he has the potential to be and starts to take command of that offense, which would be great by all accounts. So Downs to me is a guy, another one that you can get in this range who I think has that like top 20, top 25 ceiling at the position. And yet you can get him extremely late.
I love that call. I will say one thing about Downs, because we've been high on him too. And I think the player is what really excites me the most. I would push back a little bit on the Flacco giving them just decent quarterback play. I saw this stat from Heath yesterday. Over the last 17 games, Flacco was on pace for or actually just totaled over 4,700 passing yards. Like that is unheard of. We only had 6 passers, I think, in the NFL top 4,000 last year. It was either 6 or 8. So he really did generate a lot of yards. I am a little bit more skeptical of both Jones and Richardson's ability to consistently get him the football, but I mean, he's open all the time, so it shouldn't be that hard. And Daniel Jones checks down all the time. So I feel like the Jones thing would help him. We'll see what happens there. But I mean, it's a great call. You're betting on the talent. You don't have to pay a big price. So I'm in on this one as well. Let's move forward and let's give Jared the next pick.
Yeah, so I had 2 wide receivers dialed up for round 10, and one of them was Josh Downs. I really like Josh
First
Downs.
snipe of the draft. First big snipe.
Well, I got another guy, so it
Okay.
wasn't too bad of a snipe. But yeah, I mean Downs on a per route efficiency has been awesome. He was awesome last year. 28% target per route rate last year, 5th best among wide receivers. The 4 guys ahead of him were Puka Nacua, Malik Neighbors, CD Lamb, and Nico Collins.
Wow.
So nice company there. 2.20 yards per route for Downs last year, 17th best among wide receivers. The concerns are obviously the quarterback play. Then he also has the Jaden Reed problem where he doesn't play in 2 wide receiver sets. He had a 75% route rate last year. That was 63rd among wide receivers. So that's an issue as well. So he has some obstacles to clear, but he's just a talent I want to bet on. Like if things break his way, he could really smash this price tag. So the Downs pick I like a lot. I'm gonna go with Keon Coleman though in round 10. A guy who I just continue to be surprised how cheap he is. I just feel like a second year wide receiver, 33rd overall pick last year on a strong offense. I'm just surprised there's not more buzz for Keon Coleman. And I get he was disappointing last year. He didn't really help fantasy teams at all. But for one, I'd say he might have been starting to break out last year before the wrist injury. His 2 games before that wrist injury, 4 catches, 125 yards, and then 5 catches for 70 yards and a touchdown. Then he hurts his wrist and just isn't the same player the rest of the season. The other thing about Keon Coleman is if you kind of look beyond the raw production, there were a lot of things to like about what he did as a rookie. 19.2 yards per catch on a 15.5 yard ADOT. So he was working downfield, making big plays. Also, though, 7.7 yards after the catch per reception. That was 5th best among 84 qualifying wide receivers. Coleman also led all players in NFL Next Gen Stats yards after catch per reception over expected. So he was doing a lot more than expected after the catch, based on where he caught the ball, where the defenders were, all that stuff. So I think he's going to add value after the catch. And he also, I think not surprisingly, played a big role in the red zone for the Bills. 25 red zone targets last year that led the Bills, despite the fact that Coleman missed 4 games. He had a 14% touchdown rate. Like I think he's going to be a high touchdown rate just because of the type of player he is and because he's playing with Josh Allen. Then of course, we already have Khalil Shakir with the high ankle sprain. Josh Palmer's been banged up. Dalton Kincaid's still been dealing with knee trouble. So I just think there's room for Coleman to be the number 1 target in this passing game this year, and to get that in round 10, a guy with what I think is big touchdown upside. Like I wouldn't be in the double-digit rounds of drafts. I think Coleman has the best chance to catch 9-10 touchdowns. I don't think you can find a receiver in that range of drafts that has more touchdown upside. So I've been taking a lot of Keon Coleman.
I love that call because go ahead. Sorry, Justin.
No, I was going to say, as a Bills fan, I'm not sure if Jared's a Bills fan as well, but as a Bills fan, I think last year when Coleman showed up, and often this is one of the biggest things I want to see from rookies, do they step in and do they have that superstar quality and they fit right in and they're immediately going to produce? Or might it take a little bit of time? And I think Coleman's in that second category where we knew right away the way they were talking about him, it was going to take a little bit of time for him to figure out how to win in the pros. And we started to see that last year. And by all accounts, it's happening this off season. A lot of positive buzz with him. And now, with Shakir missing time, that's only going to create more opportunity, more targets. I really, really love this call. And I agree with Jared that I don't understand why more people aren't getting excited about Coleman.
I think for me, and I love this call, I think part of the reason there's lack of excitement and you can get him this late is that, in my opinion, fantasy managers, maybe us as a whole as analysts, underrate, because it's so hard to predict year over year, the importance of touchdowns. They're almost everything in our game. And even a player like Marvin Harrison Jr., who was a big bust at ADP last year, returns some value because of him, how many touchdowns he's able to score. I look at players like Coleman as almost like an arbitrage play for a player like Marvin Harrison Jr., who's still going multiple rounds ahead of him. And if he does get to that touchdown range we can expect or we hope for with Coleman, it's just that immediate that he's paying back at value on his ADP. It doesn't really matter what else he does.
Yeah, I don't know if the Bills are going to score 62 touchdowns again, but it wouldn't surprise me if they were close. And last year, James Cook had 18 of the 62 touchdowns. I would expect a little bit more of an even disbursement of those touchdowns this year. And Keon Coleman, just with his profile, I think is in line for a big touchdown bump. I love that call.
Yeah, it's a big one for us here. All right, we're going to take another break to hear a word from our sponsors. We're going to get in some final round picks from these analysts.
They want to take this place from us. My family is in danger. My wife is lost to me, and I don't have time.
1923, new season now streaming exclusively on Paramount Plus.
All right. We had Keon Coleman come off the board there. And now we'll go back. Actually, it looks like we've kind of a little bit out of order here. I might have missed a pick there. So Fitz, you're on the clock here for 2.
All right. Before I make that pick, can I just push back on one of the pick? Like we've been agreeing with each other a lot, and
I don't want this. We want pushback.
Yeah, we don't want the Greek chorus here. So the Josh Downs thing. I mean, you guys have mentioned some of the headwinds, like the quarterback issue, the possibility he doesn't play a lot in 2 receiver sets. Hasn't been a prolific touchdown scorer, but I think the biggest headwind for him is Tyler Warren. Like, I think Tyler Warren is going to be a real problem for his target share as far as those short and intermediate targets. Like, if Tyler Warren is as good as they're hoping he's going to be as a 14th overall draft pick, and the buzz has been really positive about him, I just think he's going to threaten the target share for Josh Downs.
And I think that's a great point. And, I head up the projections at Draft Sharks, which fuel our rankings. And so I do those. And then the other guys come at me with like, this guy should be higher in the rankings. And then we kind of argue it out. Downs is someone even I've wanted to get higher in the rankings. But when I sit down and do the projections, it's kind of tough because of all this environment stuff we've talked about. Like, I don't expect the Colts to be a prolific passing game. They're not going to throw a lot of passing touchdowns. Even Daniel Jones has a super low career passing touchdown rate. So, that hurts Downs. The playing time hurts Downs. Tyler Warren getting added to the mix hurts Downs. So, from a numbers perspective, it is kind of hard to push him much higher than where he is in ADP right now.
Yeah, it's a bet on talent situation for sure. I mean, even AD Mitchell, showing out in camp right now and in joint practices, that's a guy that I think I have on 80% of my dynasty teams. I have a lot of faith in him becoming a meaningful NFL receiver too. So they have a lot of pieces. That is definitely sure. It's a good point by Pat.
Yeah. And Michael Pittman, the guy who was playing with a broken back last year, might have a little bit of a rebound after that. So
yeah, it's very interesting with these offenses that have a lot of these exciting talent at skill positions. We just have to focus on, or I think at least we have to consider, what's the actual team context here? What are they doing in the passing game, and how much of that we know they can get a certain piece of that pie, but then what is that pie as a whole worth? So I thought it was a good pushback there. And I love a little pushback on the show. So I'm going to let you take over here, Pat, with 2 picks. And if there is any pushback that comes, looking at you, Justin, after that, no, just kidding. Let it be known.
All right. Well, Jared really kind of rocked my draft strategy with that Tyjae Spears pick, because I don't really have another option I like in round 11. And another reason I like Spears, they upgraded that offensive line with Dan Moore and Kevin Zeitler, and they had a lot of offensive line injuries last year. So I think that could actually be a strength of the team. I'm going to go with Brock Purdy from round 9. And his ADP is in that quarterback 1, quarterback 2 border area. But in his 2 full seasons as a starter, Purdy has finished QB 7 and QB 10 in fantasy points per game among QBs who have made at least 6 starts. He's averaging 8.9 yards per attempt for his career. And just to put that number into perspective, the best single season yards per attempt that Tom Brady ever had in his career was 8.6 in 2011. And Purdy is averaging 8.9. It just shows that he's good and that Kyle Shanahan's system is pretty good. And it's just, we're kind of, I know some people like Juwan Jennings, some people like Ricky Pearsall. We don't know if we're going to get anything out of Brandon Ayuk, but we also have Kittle and McCaffrey, and just Purdy is a really good way to sort of tap all of these pass catchers. And, if we're not sure where to place our bets at wide receiver, maybe Purdy is just a smart bet. He gave us some rushing value last year, 323 yards, 5 touchdowns. Maybe the rushing numbers regret, but Purdy could be due for a positive bounce in touchdown rate. Only 4.4% last year. That's below his career mark of 6%. And the other thing, I think the 49ers have one of the easiest passing game schedules in the league this year.
Interesting. Where are you guys at with Purdy and just the entire 49ers offense? Because obviously we have the Jennings injury. We don't know about Ayuk right now, but there's a couple players that are just Purdy, McCaffrey, that are just really interesting fantasy plays this year. Jared and Justin, any thoughts on either of those?
Yeah, I'm buying San Francisco's offense in general. Pretty much all of these guys I'm drafting at cost. It's just, Pat mentioned the efficiency, and it's been that way in the running game as well. It's just been one of the most efficient offenses in the NFL under Kyle Shanahan. Purdy's someone I wish I had more of. There's so many quarterbacks in that range I like, right? Like Drake May.
Right.
I like Trevor Lawrence a lot. JJ McCarthy. I'm curious to see with the Purdy rushing stuff, because he went from 1.7 fantasy points per game rushing in 2023 to 4.2 last year. So I think that's big. If that's going to continue, he's definitely going to beat ADP. I'm not 100% sure it's going to, though.
Yeah, not a league-winning quarterback, but a guy you can certainly win your league with, because you get to take him so late. You can stock up at all the other positions. Pat alluded to it. He has the 4th easiest fantasy quarterback schedule in my strength of schedule matrix. His bye isn't until week 14, so it's like a set it and forget it. You probably don't have to worry about that position for a while. And yeah, you'll get, solid low-end QB1 stats and maybe even mid-range QB1 stats if he has another great season.
It's interesting to me because I think those rushing numbers came up so much because the offensive line was at its worst it's been during the Purdy era last year. That's my only – I want to buy back in on this 49ers offense, especially as somebody who doesn't buy into injury predicting that much. So I like McCaffrey. But my one pushback is just that offensive line is aging. Trent Williams himself is getting older, and they haven't had the resources to do a lot to improve it, just based on where they're at as an NFL franchise, winning in the games they've won and with their salary cap situation. So I do just worry, is this the next line to fall apart? And if so, it could really derail that team. But otherwise, there's nothing to not like here.
That's where I would just bet on Shanahan, like scheming around any O-line issues.
Yeah, it's fair. And he has done so in his coaching history. So let's move to Pat. You got one more pick here. I skipped last. I gave the ad break before your second pick. I'm sorry about that, but you're back on the board.
No, that's okay. All right, this one is going to be controversial, so people might be getting out the rotten fruit for this one. I'm going to go with Kyle Pitts off the board in my undrafted category, and I know Kyle Pitts is this fantasy pariah for so many people, and I know people are like yelling at me right now as they watch or listen to this show. But look, I mean, Kyle Pitts is still only 24 years old, and he played his first NFL game at the age of 20 and topped 1,000 yards, becoming the first rookie tight end to have 1,000-yard season in 60 years since Mike Ditka. And I'm just not ready to give up on him yet. Like, he's averaged 8 yards per target in his first 4 seasons. That's pretty good. Like Travis Kelce, TJ Hawkinson has averaged 7.1 yards per target for his career. That's almost a full yard worse. And my buddy Andrew Cooper of Fantasy Alarm, when he's talking about trying to find sleeper tight ends, like, he basically has 2 criteria. Are they athletic? And in Kyle Pitts' case, yes, he's a freakish enough athlete that he was drafted 4th overall when he came out. And 2, could they be the number 2 target earner on their team? And I think with Kyle Pitts, the answer is yes. Clearly, Drake London is number 1, but you've got Darnell Mooney, who is, not really a prolific target earner, and now he's hurt. And who else? I mean, there's no one. Bijan's going to be used in the passing game, but running backs aren't going to get 100 targets. So I do still think it's too early to give up on Kyle Pitts. And we've heard Falcons offensive coordinator Zach Robinson say that he expects Pitts to take a big jump in year 2 of his system. And we do have some semi-plausible excuses for Kyle Pitts face planting the last few years. I mean, there were some injuries. There was the unfamiliarity with Robinson's system last year. Maybe we finally get that suitable encore to his rookie year this year.
Anyone have thoughts on Pitt? I have a few, but I want to get to you guys first. Jared, Justin, any thoughts on Pitt?
Well, I mean, I'll say
it's interesting that Penix is talking so much about getting him the ball, right? Did you see us get him the ball?
Right.
KP is going to get the ball a lot this year. I think that is important, like the whole golf buddies narrative and all that sort of stuff. I do think it factors in there. I'm worried a little bit that Pitts isn't the same athletic specimen that he was coming out, though, that the injuries have like sapped some of that from him. And we've seen that from other players. Like a more extreme example would be Juju Smith-Schuster, who was incredible early in his career. And then injuries just didn't make him the same player. And it was the same name on the back of the jersey for years to come, still is, but he is nowhere near that guy. And he wasn't after those first few seasons. So that's a little bit of my concern, that Pitts just isn't the player that we all thought he was coming out. But in this range, there's zero risk to take a chance on that.
Yep. Yeah, I was gonna say, I can say two nice things about Pitts at least. One is that, as Pat mentioned, he's turning 25 in October, and our aging curve research has found that 25 is the peak age for tight ends. And then the second nice thing I can say about him is he's super cheap in drafts. So like I don't think he's a bad pick at cost. He's not for me, but I don't think, it's not going to kill your season if you draft Kyle Pitts and he doesn't deliver.
As someone who's drafted a lot of Kyle Pitts throughout his NFL career for fantasy football, I am finally off the bandwagon. I'm not knocking your pick here, Pat, but for me, the issues are, one, what Justin brought up. I am not sold he's that same athlete he was at Florida. I mean, that tape at Florida was something else. That's why I kept drafting him, and I just haven't seen a lot of that at the NFL level. Two, I think a lot of people have talked about with Penix in at quarterback, oh, this is great for Kyle Pitts, because what Kyle Pitts needs is someone who could stretch the seam vertically, and that fits Penix's skill set. Well, that's somewhat true. Penix is an outside thrower. He doesn't throw well over the middle of the field, or he hasn't, at least at Washington and in his first year with Atlanta. So I don't know necessarily if that benefits Kyle Pitts. And then three, the big one for me, we've mentioned a lot of players like Juwan Jennings on the show. Is he going to get the snaps? Because there are so many personnel packages I can see that the Falcons deploying where he's just not on the field. So I get it. And the price is so cheap, it's basically free, Pat. So I'm in on that. But I just don't know if I can do it again. I don't know if I put myself back through it. All right,
totally get it. Totally get it. He's. I think a lot of people have sworn off him for good. There's just so much scar tissue built up.
You're right. All right, let's move forward. Let's go to Jared. You're on the board here for another pick. Who do you like here?
So it's going to be round 12, Rashid Shaheed for me. And this starts with, I'm above consensus on most things, which is definitely scary because the quarterback situation is rough. It doesn't sound like it's been going well in training camp. So that's definitely the downside here. But I really like the Kellen Moore hire. I think that's a big plus for this offense. Kellen Moore, 6 seasons as an NFL OC for 3 different teams. 4 of those 6 teams finished top 7 in points. 4 of them finished top 11 in total yards. But the big thing with Kellen Moore, fast-paced offenses, high play volume offenses. All 6 of his offenses have finished top 9 in plays per game. They've all run at least 65 plays per game. The Saints, by comparison, last year were at 60.7 plays per game. So I think you're going to get a lot more play volume out of this offense, which definitely helps all these skill position guys. And then Shaheed, I just think he's an underrated player. Go back last year, he obviously missed the final 2/3 of the season with the knee injury, but he was sitting wide receiver 23 in PPR points through week 6 last year, had a 23% target share, 2.04 yards per route. That was 29th among wide receivers. It was just behind T. Higgins, tied with Devontae Adams, ahead of Terry McLaurin, DK Metcalf, Jackson Smith, and Jigba, just to name a few guys. Yards per target, Rashid Shaheed, he's at 10.4 yards per target for his career. That leads all 164 active receivers with 100+ career targets. It's like Shaheed, and it's like Jefferson, Chase, and like Ladd McConkey. I think that's like your top 4 or something. It's like crazy company Shaheed is with there. He returns as the clear number 2 target in this passing game. I think it's going to be a very concentrated passing game. It's Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed, that are going to get some, Alvin Kamara, Juwan Johnson, but there's really nothing at wide receiver beyond those top 2 guys. And then the last point on Shaheed is, despite the quarterback concerns, I think you're going to get positive regression on his deep ball catch rate this season. If you look at Shaheed's catch rate on deep targets by season, it was 86% in 2022, which he's not going to get there again. That's absurd. 2023, 57% catch rate on deep targets. Last year, 20% catch rate on deep targets. He just didn't reel this in. That stuff is very volatile from season to season. I think you're probably going to get, a better catch rate on deep balls from Shaheed this season.
Big time call. Shaheed was just a player last year who looked like he was on the cusp of that breakout before the injury. So I'm very interested to see it. I just can't get myself to buy into that Saints quarterback situation. I can't believe you can enter a season with those 3, Shuck, Rattler, and Haener. But we'll see what happens, because that's burned me in the past, not trying to buy into that, because like you said, sometimes we can have situations where Kellen Moore or anyone who comes in and calls the plays can design offense and scheme it open. And so I'm very interested to see that. Does anyone have any thoughts on Shaheed before we move on to Justin for your first pick, for your first year, last 2 picks?
I mean, my thought is this is the first time that I've been sniped in the draft, because that was
there we go.
I was going to take here.
Nice.
I know the quarterback situation isn't ideal, but it's not just the start of last season, which was a small sample size. Like even 2 years ago, it was his second year in the league. Right. he put up 6 top 20 performances, like weekly performances. Now it's very boom or bust, right? Because I think he was outside of the top 50 receivers most weeks. So you have to be willing to like stomach some of those bad weeks. But if you're getting him as your wide receiver 3 or your flex, that's fine. I want a guy in that spot that's going to be able to put up 20 points for me in a given week. And he definitely has shown he can do that.
I had Rashid Shaheed in the Scott Fish Bowl last year, and Scott Fish was awarding points for kick return and punt return yardage too. Until he got hurt, Rashid Shaheed was like the MVP of that league. He was giving me crazy point totals week after week. Now, obviously, most fantasy leagues aren't going to give you any kick return points, but I love the call, and I would push back a little just on the worries about the passing game. I know that's going to scare people and make Shaheed like push him way down the board in redraft leagues, people's home leagues, especially where everyone's going to be terrified of the Saints quarterbacks. But every year, I mean, even the worst passing games in the league still generally produce around 3,000 passing yards. Like no matter who the quarterbacks are, 3,000 is kind of the baseline. And it's a pretty skinny target tree with the Saints, and Shaheed is a pretty thick branch of that target tree.
I really like the way you frame that, Pat, because yeah, we're not expecting much from this pass game, but who else is going to get a piece of that pass game outside of Olave? And it really is Shaheed and Olave. So it'll be very interesting to see what happens there. All right, Justin, who we got here?
I mean, for my round 12 pick, you could go a lot of different ways. Obviously, I wanted Shaheed. I think there's so many, number 2 backs that you could grab in this range, Ray Davis and Jalen Wright. Like I'm taking all those guys in drafts, but I want to highlight a guy that I don't think is getting the kind of buzz that he should be getting fantasy wise. I think this guy could totally finish as a top 10, top 12 quarterback this season. It's JJ McCarthy with the Vikings. All the talk has been, Caleb Williams, who I think will have a good year eventually under Ben Johnson, and Drake May, who we've already talked about, these sophomore quarterbacks that can step up and, really be good fantasy starters. McCarthy is in a system where he's been there for a year. So presumably knows the system well now. He's had a lot of time. He's not just getting thrown out there. Kevin O'Connell, his quarterbacks in Minnesota over the last few years have all been pretty good for fantasy. Whether you look at Sam Darnold last year, which we all know, QB 11 in fantasy points per game, 18.8. Kirk Cousins, QB 7, 19.3 in 2023. Kirk Cousins was QB 13 in 2022, averaged 18 fantasy points per game. Even like when Josh Dobbs got out there, I think he had a 5-game starting stretch a couple years ago when Cousins got hurt. He was the QB 10. He averaged 19.1 fantasy points per game. Nick Mullins, and I say Nick Mullins because I know I used him in a couple Superflex leagues where I had injuries and needed that second quarterback. Nick Mullins in that final month that year when Cousins was hurt, QB 14, averaged 17.9 fantasy points per game. And yet McCarthy is going way later than that. And McCarthy is a first-round talent, a guy that is surrounded by weapons. Yes, Jordan Addison is going to be suspended for a few games to start the year. I'm not worried about that. They have other guys that can step up as long as Justin Jefferson's hamstring is okay. And I think he has a lot of time to get right before the season. I think McCarthy is going to be right up there in that range I'm talking about, flirting or in the low end QB1 range. And you can get him way behind all these other guys. I don't understand it. I don't get it. I don't get why more people aren't talking about him.
Where are you guys at, Jared and Pat, with McCarthy? Because I feel like he is definitely one of the more polarizing players just because we haven't seen him miss a year, but it is still, the upside is crazy with him.
I just think he's in such a good spot that it's going to be tough for him to fail for all the reasons Justin mentioned. Like this system, the weapons, the O-line is better, as I think Pat mentioned, talking about Jordan Mason earlier.
Right.
And then McCarthy's rushing ability too. I mean, he's a plus athlete. We've started to hear that coming out of Minnesota now over the past week or two, both from the coaching staff and some of the beat writers, that they want to take advantage of his rushing ability. So, I mean, for me, I think he's probably at least as good as Sam Darnold was last year. And like Darnold was a top 12 fantasy quarterback. So, despite McCarthy being a guy we still don't know a ton about, right? 'Cause he hasn't played in the NFL. He didn't throw a whole lot at Michigan. I just think the situation is so good that, again, it's going to be tough for him not to hit.
Yeah. And I think fantasy managers have kind of learned their lesson from last year, because last year we saw a lot of people dropping Justin Jefferson below Amon-Ra St. Brown and maybe even other receivers in their rankings. And people aren't doing that this year. And I think they're ranking McCarthy higher than where we had Darnold ranked last year. Kevin O'Connell is one of those guys who's like on the God level play caller tier, like right up there with McVay and Shanahan. And, you know, I'm a biased Packer fan, so I maybe put Matt LaFleur on there too. But like, I just kind of trust Kevin O'Connell to get it right. And it's not like McCarthy is a rookie now. He's actually been sort of under O'Connell's wing for a full year now and watching and learning last year. So undoubtedly that helped.
Yeah, it'll be very interesting to see it play out. So far, there's been no misses for Kevin O'Connell, and I love that he has a good offensive line to play from. I watched a lot of McCarthy tape as a Giants fan. We were interested in him in that draft. I remain a little bit cautious about him just from watching his film. I just think what Jared said is true. There just hasn't been a lot to go off of, so it's a lot of projection, but that's fine. Sometimes that's what you have to do. Justin, let's get to your last pick here in this draft. Who's the last sleeper you wanted to highlight today?
This is like the deep sleeper that we're going for here.
Yeah, your deep sleeper.
I think fantasy managers wrote this guy off. And I think this happens sometimes in fantasy where we have expectations of a player. They don't meet those expectations. And then everybody's just like, okay, they're never going to get there. And maybe you could say like, you know, Kyle Pitts that we just talked about is a little bit of that, where people have gone so far down on Kyle Pitts that now he is this like very, very cheap value that you can get, even though he still has some upside attached to him. I'm looking at Bryce Young, and I'm going to talk about another quarterback here. It might not be the sexiest thing to do, but Bryce Young last year, we finally saw it start to come together. I know the rookie season was bad. The offensive line was terrible for him. He was just running for his life out there. Last year, he gets the quarterback career resurrector in Dave Canales. He shows up, and early in the season, didn't look great, right? But in the second half of the year, something clicked for him. After that Panthers week 11 bye, he was like a different player entirely. He looked more comfortable out there. He started to use his legs more, which was huge for his fantasy value. And the result was the 9th most fantasy points per game among quarterbacks over the final 7 weeks of the regular season last year. Now, he's going to have another full offseason here in Canales' system. He gets a true number one target finally. He hasn't had that. Now he gets this legit number one receiver in Tedero McMillan. I think his ceiling is right up there in that sort of low-end QB1, high-end QB2 range, and yet you're getting him outside of the top 20 quarterbacks. I don't have it ranked that way, but I think there's a path there to him being a top 12, top 15 quarterback this year, and I don't think it's that much of a stretch.
That's an interesting one, especially for I feel like super flex leagues and 2 quarterback leagues. Like if you can get a player like Bryce Young at no cost, you can kind of alter your whole strategy, especially if you're in an auction for a super flex or 2 quarterback around that idea of, look, I trust him. And he's a player Jacob and I look back on when we did our quarterback rankings. We were surprised, I think, at least I'll say I was surprised at how well Bryce Young graded out from an accuracy standpoint under pressure, 10 to 19 yard passes, 20 plus. He really anticipated things a lot better. And that was always supposed to be his superpower coming into the NFL, anticipation, his ability to get the football out on time, leading the receiver. Now he has more to work with, like you broke down, Justin. I think that's an interesting pick. I like that one. I've toyed with the idea in my Superflex leagues, at least, of just waiting for my second quarterback and pairing Bryce with a player, maybe an Anthony Richardson type or something like that, and seeing what I can get out of that. And maybe this is the guy to do it. I'm very curious to hear. Does anyone else have any thoughts on Bryce going into this year?
I'll just add that I think he's another guy who's going to give you some sneaky rushing production as well. 15.8 rushing yards per game as a rookie for Bryce Young, 20.1 rushing yards per game across his 12 starts last year. And he's averaging 6.1 yards per carry over the last 2 seasons. That's third best among 35 qualifying quarterbacks. So he's a plus athlete. He's willing to take off and scramble. He's not going to get a lot of design stuff, I don't think, but someone who, again, at the margins is going to add some fantasy value with his legs.
I do think it's kind of a tired trope in fantasy football. Like if a team is playing from behind a lot, it automatically means great things for the quarterback. But the Panthers defense does not look very good on paper. And it is possible the Panthers are going to be thrust into a lot of shootouts where they kind of have to put the pedal to the metal on offense. And Bryce Young is maybe going to have some, I don't know, possible he has some big spike weeks as far as passing yardage.
Dave Canales did it with Geno Smith.
Right.
He helped Baker Mayfield get things going. Why can't he do it with Bryce Young as well? I think we're going to see it this season.
Already saw signs of him doing it with Bryce Young in the second half of last season. So it's a great call. And I'm very curious to see how that plays out and if people maybe alter their draft strategy too, to wait for a player like that. How about Jared? One more pick for you. Last pick of this sleeper draft. Who are you going
Yes,
with?
my deep sleeper is going to be Jerome Ford. I know Dylan Sampson is the hot name right now. I have Ford ranked one spot ahead of Sampson in the rankings up on DraftSharks.com right now, and Sampson's going a few rounds ahead of Jerome Ford. So I've been drafting a lot of Jerome Ford. For me, it starts with he was really good last year, 5.4 yards per carry.
Wow.
All other Browns running backs last year, 3.4 yards per carry. So Ford was 2 yards per carry above the rest of the team's running backs. If you look at the 47 running backs with 90 plus carries last year, Ford was 5th among those 47 in rush yards over expected per attempt. He was 5th in yards after contact per attempt. PFF had him 15th in their rushing grades. And then in the passing game, he also led Browns running backs with 37 catches last year. He had 44 catches in 2023. So he can do it on the ground and in the passing game. And then if you just want to compare like Ford and Sampson as prospects, both guys broke out in their final college seasons. Sampson is 200 pounds with a 54th percentile speed score. Jerome Ford, 210 pounds, 85th percentile speed score. Sampson did go 30 picks earlier in his draft than Ford went, but they were both day 3 picks. So I'm not convinced that like Dylan Sampson is just a straight up better player than Jerome Ford, especially at this point of their careers. And the last point here is I think timing favors Jerome Ford here. If Quinshon Judkins is going to be suspended, which we all assume he's going to be, it's going to happen at the start of the year. That's, I think, when Ford is most likely to still be ahead of Sampson on the depth chart. It takes rookies time to climb the depth chart. If you tell me Judkins is suspended the entire season, I'd probably favor Sampson because I do think there's a chance, second half of the year he pulls ahead of Ford. But if it's like a 6-game suspension to open the season for Judkins, I think Ford might be the guy that we'd rather have in our fantasy lineups.
He really does feel like just like a free square pick. I know maybe for deep sleepers, sometimes people want to go for these like high upside picks, which I understand as well. But Ford at cost, it's hard for me to see how he doesn't return that value. Judkins, even if he does play this season, he's going to be well behind the 8 ball as a rookie. Then Sampson is a player who comes from the Josh Heupel system. Like, how fast are we going to see him on the field? So it's very interesting. It just feels like there could just be a lot of volume there at no cost. So I do really like that pick. All right, we're going to close the draft out here, and then I want to talk a little bit briefly before we let you guys go about strategy, but after these sleepers. But with Fitzy, what's your last pick here?
Well, Smola and Boone really painted me into a corner here. I have to go to round 11, and Igbuka and Tyjae Spears were really attractive choices. It's a big drop off to the 3rd best sleeper in the round 11 tier. So I don't know if I can make a real passionate case for Tank Bigsby, but I can make a case for him. And I mean, there has been a lot of buzz. It does seem like he might be their starting back. I do expect them to use multiple backs in Liam Cohen's system in Jacksonville, but like Bigsby just blew away Travis Etienne last year as far as effectiveness. I mean, he had 4.6 yards per carry. Etienne was at 3.7. Bigsby averaged 3.74 yards after contact per carry, which ranked 3rd among running backs with at least 60 rushing attempts. Forced 46 missed tackles, tied for 13th most. Averaged 0.74 rushing yards over expected per carry, 9th best in the league. And, we saw Etienne finish below water in rushing yards over expected per carry last year. The only problem is that Bigsby is just a 0 as a pass catcher. 8 catches in 33 NFL games. So, like, I'm not even really considering him in PPR because it's just not a good value proposition there. But in half-point PPR or standard, like, I'm willing to click that button. And the nice thing is, even with the positive buzz about Tank Bigsby, like, he hasn't really moved up in ADP very much. He's still typically going well into the double-digit rounds, like 11th or later. So there, as like a 3rd or 4th running back, I can get on board.
Very interesting. It's going to be very interesting to see how the Jaguars backfield plays out with all those players in there, a lot of talent, but also just the idea of like, is that offensive line ready for it? Because I do really trust the coaching staff and the scheme, but it's just so different going from Tristan Wirfs and some of those players, Barton on the offensive line, to what they have in Jacksonville on the offensive line. And that just something to keep an eye on. All right. I do want to wrap this show up by asking you guys a few questions, just with all these sleepers in mind. You guys have pinpointed your favorite sleepers, values at cost, and there's a lot of different players in here. A lot of quarterbacks, ton of running backs, some receivers, and one tight end. Does this impact at all? Like, do you guys have like a way of like knowing in mind, I want to go into this draft getting this sleeper and that sleeper? Will that impact your strategies at all? It's like, is there a way to have like a backwards approach to positional strategy? It's something I've always been curious about. Like going in, I identify these guys as players I want in the late round. One's a receiver. Let's say you have 2 receivers. Do I then not take receivers as early in the draft because I want to leave some of those starting slots on my fantasy roster open for these late round guys I love? Does that impact your strategy at all? Let's start here with Justin. I want to hear your thoughts on this first.
Not really. Like if I feel really strongly about a late round quarterback in a given season, then I'm willing to, kind of rearrange my approach a little bit. But I would say this year, I'm kind of hoping to get an elite quarterback. I want that advantage that those guys give you, and you have to spend up to get them. But I know there's so many good QBs, but I think that's just more of a reason to play in super flex leagues versus, actually waiting and hitting on one of those guys. But if you end up missing out, because it all depends on where you are in the round kind of, and whether those elite quarterbacks fall back to you, if you miss out on them, then I really like to take those chances on the guys like Drake May and JJ McCarthy and stuff. But no, for the most part, even though I didn't talk about any running backs here, I got sniped on a couple there. I'm still trying to get a lot of those late round running backs, take a couple shots on receivers that I feel good about. But it's not really impacting what I'm doing in the early rounds. And I'm not going in with like a set plan because of whatever I think I can get in the late rounds.
Okay. And is that different at all for you, Jared?
No, I mean, the quarterback thing is something I've been wrestling with all draft season, and I still don't know my final answer because I really like the elite quarterbacks. I think if you can get any of those guys in round 4, and to me, that includes Jalen Hurts. I think he's right there with those other top 3 guys. Any of those guys in round 4, I think, are excellent picks. I think any of them, even in the back half of round 3, when you're comparing them to the running backs and wide receivers available there, I think they're strong picks there. That said, there are so many of these late round quarterbacks that I think have upside to be like top 12 options. So I still don't know what the optimal, move is at quarterback for what I've been doing lately is I do think in best ball, I think that's the better spot to wait on quarterback, take 3 of these upside guys where you don't have to pick and choose which weeks they're going to go off for you. And I think in lineup setting leagues where you do have to, pick a starter each week, that's where I think more likely to take the elite quarterback, kind of set it and forget it with the high floor, high ceiling combo. So that's kind of how I'm playing it for now, but I do think both ways can work at quarterback. I think for me, the takeaway is I think you probably either want to be, one of the first teams to draft your quarterback this year, get one of those top 4 guys, or be one of the last teams to draft them and just take, 2 of these guys going in, I don't know, say round 12 or later.
And how about you, Pat?
Yeah, I mean, Jared just sort of touched on this. Like I mentioned 2 quarterbacks on this show, Brock Purdy and Drake May. And Purdy typically goes before May, and I think Purdy's a terrific value, but like May is my favorite sleeper. So it's hard to do this bottom up approach at quarterback. Does that mean I pass on Purdy if I can get him at a good price and wait for May? Is like Purdy my alarm when Purdy is drafted? I should be thinking about taking May like in the next round. So yeah, I mean, I've kind of split the difference with those guys, and maybe there've been a few best ball drafts where I've gotten that as my 2 quarterback combo. But generally with sleepers, like I don't think about them that much, and they're not really a linchpin of my draft strategy, just because it is hard to build a draft strategy from the bottom up. But because I do have my favorite sleepers typically ranked above ADP, above consensus among people who rank for a living like Justin and Jared, I'm more likely to get those guys anyway. And I know I'm not going to collect all of them on a single team, but, hopefully over the course of the draft season, I can get some representation of all those guys on a bunch of different teams.
I love it. Guys, thank you so much for joining us today for Sleepers Week. I really appreciate you guys taking the time to do this with us. You can find all of their work by skipping back to the beginning of the show, and then you can listen to where you can find their work. I could also go over it real quickly right now just to remind the listeners. You can find Jared's work at draftsharks.com. You can also find the Draft War Room customizable cheat sheet. You can find Pat's work at Fantasy Pros. They're offering a 3-day free trial for premium subscriptions. Definitely check that out. And Justin over at Yahoo Sports, love his content over there. He's doing Sleeper Week. So if you do want more sleepers, that's where you get them. And for everyone listening to Beyond the Box Score, thank you so much for helping our channel take off the ground. You can find every single video we've done, all the content, as Jacob is putting up right now on the screen, over on our YouTube feed. And there's a lot of evergreen stuff. So if you want to go back and listen to our play caller series, we rank the play callers for fantasy, our quarterback rankings and tiers, anything we've done, you can find it there. Please also do us a favor, hit the like button if you haven't already, subscribe, leave a comment. These are the ways to juice us up the algorithm I talk about all the time because it's so important. And remember, this is Draftathon month here at CBS Sports. So if you want to get involved and donate to St. Jude, there are a number of ways to do it. Auctions, we're auctioning off items, calls. You can donate to the tennis match coming up next week, all the big things. So please keep an eye out for that as well. Otherwise, have a great rest of your week, and we'll talk to you soon.